Now we know that without a doubt that abortion kills an innocent living human being. Judaism prohibits killing an innocent person. Therefore, in Judaism, abortion is wrong. Jews have a keen sense of injustice and speak out against it without reservation, as in the case of a death row inmate who may be wrongly accused. Yet our innocent unborn children have no comparable advocate. Instead, the majority Jewish community actively supports killing them for any reason with no second opinion or legal defense required. This extreme view must be acknowledged and reversed in order to save Jewish lives and return a culture of life to the Jewish community as a whole. And we quote Albert Einstein, "The world is a dangerous place not because of those who do evil, but because of those who look on and do nothing." Some compassionate and well-meaning rabbis, doctors, counselors, social workers, and friends of Jewish men and women facing unplanned pregnancy advise abortion as a way to alleviate the suffering and stress that accompany this challenging problem. Lost in the recommendation for abortion is the scientific fact and spiritual truth that abortion ends the life of an innocent child, and that violating the sanctity of human life results in a cascade of painful and long-term problems, all of which reflect an alienation from God and a denial of the intrinsic value and worth of our children and ourselves. We have all been there in the womb, and we quote Rabbi Wasserman, a spiritual giant in Judaism. He says, "The Jewish soul, a simple thing, at one with God, in everything." And then looking to Albert Einstein again, "A human being is part of a whole, called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circles of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. We feel that the Jewish community suffers a spiritual death with every Jewish abortion death." Our Jewish mystical tradition comments as well on the moral imperative to protect unborn life. "There are three persons who drive away the Shekinah from the world, making it impossible for the Holy One, blessed be He, to fix His abode in the universe and causing prayer to be unanswered. The third is He who causes the fetus to be destroyed in the womb, for He destroys the artifice of the Holy One, blessed be He, and His workmanship. For these abominations the Spirit of holiness weeps." And Rabbi J. David Bleich, an authority on Jewish law and ethics, writes, "A Jew is governed by such reverence for life that he trembles lest he tamper unmindfully with the greatest of all divine gifts, the bestowal or withholding of which is the prerogative of God alone. Although he be master over all within the world, there remain areas where man must fear to tread, acknowledging the limits of his sovereignty and the limitations of his understanding. In the unborn child lies the mystery and enigma of existence. Confronted by the miracle of life itself, man can only draw back in silence before the wonder of the Lord." And looking again to Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik in his comments after New York State legalized abortion in 1970, "Sometimes we must protest under sacred and noble causes. It bleeds my heart that none of the Jewish organizations in New York protested. We are more guilty than any other people. We are more ashamed than any other generation." And this, of course, is referencing the moral imperative to protect human life and not to legalize the killing of it. And this next slide has the full statement written by the rabbi at that time. "Sometimes we must protest for sacred and noble causes. It bleeds my heart that none of the Jewish organizations, even none of the Orthodox organizations in New York, protested the recently passed abortion law under almost all circumstances as long as the woman and her doctor agree. The rabbis in New York know that this law will lead to all forms of immorality, and they know that according to the Rambam, abortion is akin to murder. Yet they are afraid to get involved, afraid to speak up. In this connection, we must say, and this is the Hebrew text for, we are more guilty than any other people, we are more ashamed than any other generation. It is precisely because New York has a concentration of Jews that New York was the state to pass the new abortion law, and the Jewish members of the New York legislature supported the law. In fact, the legislature at first defeated the abortion bill, but one New York State senator, a Jew, who had first voted against the bill, reported that on Pesach night, while sitting at the Seder, he had a pang of conscience and thought that by his vote against the abortion bill, he might cause difficulty and suffering to some girl who would otherwise have solved her problem by obtaining an abortion. Then he switched his vote, and the bill was passed. Why did not any of the rabbis in New York reassure him that his first thoughts had been right? Again, we must say here, we are more guilty than any other people. We are more ashamed than any other generation. Rabbi Soloveitchik's brother, Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik, weighs in on the immoral and spiritual crisis caused by abortion in Israel. I consider the society of today as insane. I read from the press that in Eretz Israel they permit abortions now. Sapir comes to the U.S. and asks that 60,000 boys and girls should leave the U.S. and settle in Eretz Israel. When a child is born, it's also immigration to Eretz Israel, and yet you murder the children. He then predicted, and if you kill the fetus, a time will come when even infants will be killed. The mother will get frightened after the baby will be born, and the doctor will say her life depends upon the murder of the baby. And you have a word, mental hygiene. Whatever you want, you can subsume under mental hygiene. And there is now a tendency for rabbis in the U.S. to march along with society, otherwise they'll be looked upon as reactionaries. And from Mr. Don Fetter, A View from Sinai. When abortion was legalized in New York State prior to Roe v. Wade, the great Talmudist Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik predicted, if you kill a fetus, a time will come when even infants will be killed. Been there, done that. We've gone from abortion to infanticide to euthanasia and doctor-assisted suicide. Instead of acknowledging our common humanity because we were all made in the image of God, increasingly we play God with the lives of others. Deuteronomy 30:19 admonishes, "This day I call the heavens and the earth as witness against you that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curses. Now choose life so that you may live, you and your children." This applies not only to individuals, but to nations and civilizations as well. Where are the Babylonians, the Persians, and the Phoenicians? In the words of Mark Twain, they have faded to dream stuff and passed away. Twain added, "The Jews saw them all and beat them all, not by any innate virtue, but by the power of Torah." And you choose life and you get life. You choose death and you get death. For more than half a century, we have chosen death, death by abortion, death by euthanasia, and death by rapidly falling fertility due to a refusal to marry and have children. The choice before us is stark, blessings or curses, life or death, Sinai or savagery and oblivion.